What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So on the heels of the Switch 2 reveal last week, there's been a lot of interest in this next generation device from Nintendo, with views racking up by the millions, but also concerns racking up online, as well as even one issue with the current Switch that seems to be resolved with the Switch 2 based on a certain source. We'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony as we head into February. While a Direct has been rumored, it appears Sony may have their own presentation ready to go. And we've also talked about the price of video games, especially after we had that jump to $70. Well, based on one analyst prediction, we could be going much, much higher very soon. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below. And we're gonna start today with TikTok and Marvel's Snap. So over the weekend, this was an odd 24 hours where TikTok did actually get banned in the US. And it wasn't just like, oh, you could use a VPN to get around it. It was like geo-tracked to your account. So it wasn't as straightforward and easy necessarily to get around, which of course led to a lot of frustration, online outrage is a whole thing. But after about 16, 17 hours, it was reversed seemingly, as there's like an executive order that's going to be pushed this week, and I guess they were just enabled right away from that. But there was a bit of collateral damage here. You can see this from Wario64, where he says Marvel Snap is now banned in the US, seemingly as part of the TikTok ban. To my understanding, they're actually part of the same like company with TikTok. Marvel Snap is as well. So at this time for recording, I have not seen Marvel Snap come back up, but it was funny. People were like, who cares about TikTok? That they're like, why can't I log into Marvel Snap? Oh no. So all of a sudden, a lot of people did care about the TikTok ban, but the fact that TikTok seems to be enabled again, I assume Marvel Snap will be enabled as well. It might be back by the time you're seeing this, so I guess check in on it today if you saw over the weekend that it was banned, because hopefully it's back up and running. Also, we did have a very interesting interview that was posted up a few days ago between Shuhei Yoshida, who was formerly a big name at PlayStation for quite a while, and Greg Miller with Kinda Funny. And during this, they touched on a bunch of different things at PlayStation throughout Shuhei's time there. But one thing that came up was actually PlayStation VR, and, well, he kind of apologized for the PSVR 2. We can see this is posted up. This is transcribed over on Upload VR as they were going back and forth and then talking about the VR headset, even likening it to the PlayStation 1. Greg Miller said, I still talk about that all the time. Whenever we talk about VR, you come on the GDC show and talk about, look, we are at PlayStation 1 again. We are starting from scratch. To which Yoshida replied, I'm sorry I was wrong. PSVR 2 didn't become PS2. When asked what happened with the PSVR 2, Yoshida said, well, let's move on. So I do believe, sure, behind the scenes, it was pretty clear that the support wasn't there for PSVR 2 pretty much right away. Sure, they had Horizon Call of the Mountain, Horizon, big IP in PlayStation's eyes, just in general sales. So they had at least something there to launch with. Very clear, though, they didn't really have a lot else from first party there after that. So it seemed like they pushed it out the door and then just thought maybe third parties would take the wheel at that point. And maybe in Yoshida's eyes, we should have done a bit more, and doesn't necessarily want to comment on that publicly. But it is interesting to reference that piece of technology as them with a PlayStation 1, because it was brand new for them with PSVR, and then moving to PSVR 2 in their mind would be a jump like the PS2, where they figured out a lot of the pitfalls and issues with the first VR headset, fixed everything up with the second one, have a nice lineup of games, and then really get off and running. But as we've seen, hasn't really worked out that way. Oh, and Astrobot fans, keep an eye out, because we might have a new level getting dropped in randomly at some point. This was spotted, we can see, from the PlayStation tournaments that happened over the weekend, as a new Astrobot speedrun level was revealed in the finals. Now, we don't know if this is going to be distributed to just like the game itself, and we've seen Team Asobi just randomly drop stuff multiple times now for the game, so it is possible they go, hey, here's the PlayStation tournaments level, and there's a couple bots in there. Or maybe they just drop it as a speedrun thing and there aren't bots attached to it. Just keep an eye out for that, because again, I wouldn't be shocked if we randomly woke up one day, PlayStation blog was updated, and then the level was live later that day or something. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Nintendo Switch 2, which has been I mean, a ton of conversation online around this thing. Good and bad. Some people underwhelmed by the reveal, looking forward to April 2nd when Nintendo should have a big blowout of games and features for it. Others actually very excited for what they're seeing, since it seems to be a pretty big step up and nice evolution of the current Switch. So that all around is pretty exciting. And then just based on a lot of the rumors and leaked information, especially when it comes to the hardware and the specifications, it should be a noticeable jump, and it is kind of nice actually to know that now ahead of time, as we can just look forward to the games themselves. But there's actually a lot of tracking going on right now when it comes to the views, just to see how well it's doing, how popular it is currently. Now we can see this over on VGC, who has been tracking a lot of the views, and they say that the Switch reveal, or the Nintendo Switch reveal number has been viewed over 17 million times in less than 48 hours on its American YouTube channel, tracking ahead of PlayStation 5's reveal in 2020. Now that amasses, they say, some 13.3 million as of 2 days after its reveal in June 2020. And the first teaser for the original Switch was 19.5 million during the same 2-day window. And that trailer was eventually just removed, which we assume Nintendo does that to kind of avoid confusion, I guess. And most people just re-upload it anyway. You've probably seen it in like a million YouTube videos at this point of people who use it for B-roll or something. I've used it many times as well there. But still, while it is tracking behind the Switch, that's not too surprising considering that was such a huge departure and new concept. The Switch 2 trailer will, I'm sure, continue to gain viewership over the next few months, especially leading up to April 2nd, as people are just kind of checking in on it and reminding themselves or even seeing it for the first time. But as expected, it's incredibly popular right now online. And if you look on, I know that the YouTube or the Twitter X views are kind of weird to track, because I feel like if you just scroll past it counts. It's like 50 million and then 40 million on the two main accounts for Nintendo, with Japan and then Nintendo America. So like that alone with the YouTube stuff is over 100 million views. Again, I think that's kind of skewed, but still, it does show that there is quite a bit of interest, which I already know what you're thinking. Yes, it's going to be a pain to get this system at launch for the first year, even if Nintendo does legitimately manufacture 20 million systems like Bloomberg had reported. And of course, because this system is being talked about so much and that trailer is being combed through a ton, there are some concerns around a certain part of the Switch 2. Now, you can see this is actually posted up over on Reddit with 75,000 upvotes. I did a bit of a double take on that one, over 5,700 comments, saying this connector on the Switch 2 will be a key failure point. Okay, that is that's the attachment on the side of the system itself that protrudes out, that then connects into the Joy-Con itself, which of course is then fixed to the system through magnets that are on the inside. I actually went over all of that in a video where I really did a deep dive into the trailer and all the little bits and pieces that we saw there and things that I think that some people may have missed. So check that video out if you want a more in-depth look at everything we saw there. But in this case, I do think we need a bit more information on this, specifically actually using it and seeing it in front of us. And even in Japan, this was pointed out by Genki, they are also worried. Like Japanese users are worried about the Switch 2 Joy-Con connectors, and they think, as was illustrated here, somebody decided to draw it with a sad-looking Kirby, that it will break off. Now, I don't think it's going to break off easily with the Joy-Con itself, because as you can see, just the compartment there where it slots into, it would be very difficult to break the Joy-Con off sideways. You would break the Joy-Con first, I feel like, rather than the connector itself, okay? So I don't think it's as straightforward as, yes, it's going to be incredibly easy by ripping the Joy-Con out, like from that center part just straight out rather than left to right. I just don't think that's going to be a situation you're going to run into much. Now, will people break it? Yes, people break systems all the time in some of the strangest ways. Trust me, I've seen it a lot. But if I had to take a guess here, I feel like Nintendo probably R&D'd this thing like crazy, ran it through all kinds of crazy scenarios, broke a ton of them to figure out the best way to get around these things with user error in mind. And most likely that little connector that you see inside where the Joy-Con attaches has some form of give to it, so where it can wiggle around a bit just for margin of error when you do slap the Joy-Con into the side of it or when you rip it off. So at this point, I'm not really concerned about it, but obviously when it comes out, we'll take another look ourselves. Now, the other thing with this system has to do with the joysticks themselves on the Joy-Con, which we know major issue or even fail point with the current Switch with stick drift. Well, Next Handheld is back again, who has gained a ton of credibility since we saw the system from Nintendo themselves in an official capacity, because it all lines up. I know we had the AI background stuff that was going on, and we were looking at the wristwatch over the long sleeve shirt and stuff. Yes, it was strange, but it all lined up completely. Well, they are back. We can see over on Reddit, they say the Hall effect is from teardowns. Now, if you're unaware, one of the things that Next Handheld claimed is that the joysticks that we saw in the trailer there on those Joy-Cons are indeed Hall effect sensor joysticks. So that means that they don't have the typical setup that we see, that it's physical connection to move around and track that we know does seem to fail pretty quickly, even on the current Joy-Cons. With Hall effect sensors, that's actually magnets that track. And I did a video specifically at the time on, believe it or not, the Dreamcast, which has a Hall effect joystick, yeah, from 25 years ago or something. That was the thing Sega did. And that's one of the reasons that the Dreamcast controller, if you take care of it and don't throw it down a flight of stairs, typically the joystick will be just fine. However, this will certainly be a point when it comes to the teardowns to really check in on to see, because if it is Hall effect, that would be a massive, massive win overall after the major debacle with the Joy-Con drift for the current Switch. So we'll keep an eye out for that one. But yes, the Switch, super popular, leading to people being quite concerned about the connector, but hey, maybe not so much about those joysticks. Next up, let's talk about the price of games, which, as we know, brand new titles that are considered like top of the line, AAA, sit at $70, all right? Well, it's possible those prices could be going up to maybe $100 by the end of this year. At least that's something that's being floated right now in a report, massive report, like 290 some odd pages from a certain analyst. Now, we can see this is posted up. This is over on GameSpot. Says veteran investment analyst and researcher Matthew Ball of Epilion has released a 219-page report about the state of gaming in 2025. Ball said there is hope. Again, there is hope that Take-Two will price GTA 6 at $80 or even $100, which could prove to be a turning point for the video game industry. This could break a key price barrier and allow other developers to raise prices as well, he said. Before this, a Baldur's Gate 3 developer said GTA 6 could prompt a shift to more expensive games if Take-Two decides to price it above $70. Now, I'll start this with saying I do think the $80 price point is coming sooner rather than later. It's not going to take as long as it did to go from $60 games, which started in 2005 with the Xbox 360 that holiday, to then 2020 with the PlayStation 5. So yeah, it's 15 years, not that long. I think it'll actually happen maybe before the next generation starts. And you might think, wow, they're going to raise prices mid-generation. I mean, Nintendo did. Tears of the Kingdom was $70. So yes, that can absolutely happen. Now, they're pointing to GTA 6 mostly because it has massive pull in the gaming industry right now. A lot of people will absolutely buy GTA 6 at $80, $90, probably $100. Look, if there was like a special edition that was $140, $150 and it came with a bunch of extra things, especially shark cards, whatever the equivalent is, those would probably sell out, like physically. Digitally, who knows? I assume it wouldn't, but it would definitely strain the servers there. So they're looking at this as that would be the high watermark that could maybe set that price point, and then other publishers come in and maybe go to $80 while GTA 6 is at $100. Again, I don't think we're going to make that sizable leap, but inflation absolutely did eat up the jump from $60 to $70. You don't take my word for it. Go into a grocery store and buy some groceries, look at the bill, right? That's what everyone says. And they're absolutely right in that case. But with games, the only situation here is there are many different tiers of pricing, all the way down to free. So most people will just wait on the vast majority of games. Not every game. There are some that come out and you're like, I'll pay $100 for the new Zelda. I'll pay $100 for the new God of War. Grand Theft Auto 6, absolutely. But for a lot of the games that come out, Madden, next year it'll be 90% off. Ubisoft, hey, 2 weeks from now, we'll say it would be half off, that kind of stuff. So I don't think we're going to see it this aggressively, but I actually would not be shocked if GTA 6 was $80. That would not surprise me if they announced it, because they're going to call their shot, and a lot of people are probably going to fold. Let's be real, GTA 6. So, hey, we'll see. When GTA 6 gets fully announced, release date, price point. We'll find out if the industry really is ready to move up from that $70 price point. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Sony and the potential for them to have an event, specifically a state of play for February, because this is coming from a source who, for a lot of people right now, is a made man because of the Switch 2 reveal, and that's Nate the Hate. A lot of people doubted him with the Switch 2 reveal. Definitely doubted him Wednesday night as people were going at him, and then he was calm, collected, and then look at that. Nintendo really did just shadow drop the Switch 2 reveal. Mostly hardware, Mario Kart in there, of course, but that was it. Just here you go, 8 a.m. Eastern time. There's trailer. So with that in mind, of course, people are looking to see what Nate's saying, and you can see this where he replied to someone on Twitter, where he just said, "How's February sound?" That being for a state of play from Sony, and yeah, it would make sense for Sony to have a state of play. Go figure. They would have some sort of event to start setting up 2025 with release dates and most likely just more titles in general. Right now, they do have Ghost of Yotei and they have that up on their site as a 2025 release. So no, it hasn't been like delayed out of 2025. Nothing like that. Death Stranding 2 on the Beach also slated for 2025. Otherwise, though, they are leaning heavily on third-party games, as PlayStation tends to do, especially to fill in the gaps, because it does take their first-party studios quite a while to get things going there, right? I mean, we've seen it, especially with Naughty Dog, where they had to cancel stuff, things get moved around in the background, and now we hear Blue Point and Ben Studio kind of starting over, it feels like. So yes, it would be nice to hear from Sony about, I don't know, Wolverine. That seems like a good one. Maybe Venom? There's apparently a Venom game that was in development at some point. I assume it's still on and maybe set up for this holiday. There are many different studios they can tap, and unfortunately, one of the ones I would have named for this would have been Blue Point, but that does not seem to be the case any longer. So yeah, we'll see as we get into February, as we start to hear maybe some rumblings of that, because we should have Nintendo setting up for a Direct, we should have Sony setting up for a State of Play, and then the Pokemon Company setting up for a Pokemon Presents or Pokemon Direct on Pokemon Day to close out February. So it sounds like it's going to be a pretty big month here in a few weeks. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, which is Game of the Year Madness. Metaphor versus Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown went about how I expected, with Metaphor pretty much running over Prince of Persia is like 70-30, and yeah, that's about right. I mean, Metaphor is one of the front runners here for the entire bracket, but we've already had some interesting upsets, as I mentioned before, and as we're going into the second to last round here pretty soon, we're gonna have some big time like top seeds, juggernauts going up against each other. So it'll continue getting very, very interesting. But yeah, Metaphor, go figure, did end up running over the Lost Crown. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Aaron, who says, "We're about to get a lot of 90s point-and-click game ports." You know, that is the interesting thing about the idea of the mouse itself, especially because it looks like you could have two mouse setups there for left and right hand, and maybe one's just a left-handed one. It's always designed to just be using one. Some people mentioned, and that was something that was really fun to go through the comments, all the unique ideas people have. I saw one mention, you put the system itself down, you know, face up, and then the two Joy-Cons would act as paddles for air hockey, because it can track with the mouse sensor where you're moving it on the ground. And then I guess technically you could have like some gyro stuff in there for movements. So that is a cool idea to think about. But like point and click, that makes a ton of sense. I'm also wondering if they're going to showcase it where you can use it on a couch cushion or on the armrest or something in like more of a standard setting you would expect for a console where you are not at a desk necessarily, where a mouse would be at home. So that is something I'm pretty interested to see how Nintendo presents that functionality. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card, or maybe you wanted to see a bit of a deep dive into that Switch 2 reveal trailer and pick out a few things like, I don't know, a microphone that was hiding in plain sight, I'll leave that below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.